Chityala ji, Namaskaram and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskaram and good morning to you, sir. Good morning
Sir,
to all and good evening to people in India.
it's the beginning of another week. A lot has been happening because we are on the final week before the elections in the United States. A lot of things are happening. Let's start with looking at what happened after the debate. Trump clearly crisscrossing the country on many of his, he's trying to rouse all his troops. He's actually concentrating on all those states where he had won in 2016. He's trying to shore up his base. People are saying he's playing defense, and Joe Biden has, having surfaced for the debate, has again seemed to have really picked and chosen which places he wants to go out and address. So let's start out by talking about a little bit about Joe Biden, the 7 sins of Joe Biden. This is a very interesting topic that was given by one of the leading dailies. What are your thoughts on what are the mistakes that Joe Biden has committed so far in his political career?
Well, I think the 7 sins can be attributed to the policies that is hidden, but is coming out in drips and drabs. I think the first and foremost, what is attributed is as a sin is the high taxes, right? There's a $4 trillion tax that is likely to be levied as opposed to $1.7 trillion tax cuts of President Trump. The small business, the mid-size companies taxes expected to go up from 21% to 28%, and the tax slab is expected to go from 26 to 40%. So the first is around the taxes. The second is around what they call as is the whole thing that is revolving around right to work. Right to work is about 27 states today don't follow right to work. Right to work simply implies that you have to be in a union, register in a union to work. So therefore, he wants to somehow bring in those kind of unionism into the play. Then another one which falls into this category is around the what they call death tax or the wealth estate duty. He expects to charge for those who are earning more than $1 million an estate duty, which is higher, 40%. People feel that it's basically a fraud. Lifelong people have paid taxes, and why do you need 40% estate duty tax, which got reduced? Then another one, which is within the purview, is this whole question that came out in this debate, and which is why Trump is crisscrossing the most critical states, which is Texas, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and also to Carolinas. Now, these are what you call as the fracking and the fossil fuel development states. So the whole concept is that he will stop fossil fuels and introduce a huge kind of compliant with the climate accord. So by 2035, there will be no fossil fuel. That destroys industries, jobs, and so on and so forth, and will cost the country. So you have that part of it. Then you have this big controversial issue which has held up the stimulus, is the $400 billion bailout of the liberal states which have mismanaged the state economies, and they need that money. So, I may not have exhausted all the 7, but I'm giving you the highlights of some of the, at least the 5 I've given. I can go through the other 2 as well.
So can you name us the states? Can you name us the states that are considered as too liberal and that they haven't managed their finances?
California, New York, Michigan, Pennsylvania, obviously Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
And then of course Washington State. They're all in abysmal state in terms of their mismanagement, right? So large states, but completely kind of mismanaged, and these states require money, in terms of shoring up their balance sheet. Bless you, sir.
Thank you. And the next topic that we're going to talk about, like you already touched upon the economy and the gulf between the two sides in terms of stimulus package. So it looks like now both are taking a chance and saying that well, the blame will, if any blame, would be shared between both sides equally. So that's a net zero. It's okay. Let us go to the polls. That's, we have to see what the people say about the lack of a second round of stimulus. Let's move on to what has been happening in India and with respect to Nepal. Now, looks like the mending of relationships between the two has started, and we saw that the armed forces chief visited Nepal and even met with their chief. In fact, if I remember correctly, in several wars, the Nepalese troops have fought alongside Indian troops in for India, just as the Tibetan troops have. So, what is your take on the recent developments vis-a-vis Nepal, sir?
Well, I think that the whole drivers of change that came about appears to be some kind of a engagement between the Chinese and the communist government. They seem to have propped up the communist government, which is in power, KP Oli. There's also tacit support from the Congress party in India to KP Oli, the communists. There seems to be a harmonious kind of alliance. So there was the issue around redrawing of the borders, claiming territories that don't belong to them, also conceding some territories are taken by Chinese through coercion and intrusion, and putting up banners. So that triggered some kind of response from India. They waited for their time. 2 weeks ago, there was the visit of the RAW, which is the intelligence wing, meeting with the prime minister. There was also the visit, unusual protocol, which we covered in one of the day's topics. The head of the armed forces for India visiting the Oli and having a conversation, both with the defense forces, head of the defense forces of Nepal. So it was a pleasant surprise, or not a pleasant surprise, that over the weekend the development came that Nepal has withdrawn, and so they have gone back to their old map, and India holding on to what is legitimately its territories. So therefore, it is a change that seems to have been very seamlessly through dialogue, and whatever discussions took place has happened. It's also possible that Mr. Dowell made an unusual press statement and briefing over the weekend, and where he has indicated that India will now shift to defensive offense from offensive defense. Now, what he is defensive? No, it's offensive defense. So the story is now offensive. Yeah, correct. Now he's on the offensive defense, which is what used to be defensive offense, right? So basically, he's saying after the LAC incidents, we now exercise the right to go in when we believe that people in the disputed buffer zones and border areas are sitting and trying to create trouble. So we got to make sure that the trouble is stopped when we believe that the trouble is directed towards India. Now, that puts a number of things into question, whether that applies to Nepal, whether it applies to Pakistan, whether it applies to China, but very specifically targeted at China, which is apparently they, for the first time, conceded that they went into China. They went in and took out some of the vulnerable spots, having had numerous discussions. I don't know, 28 bilateral discussions between the two army commanders have taken place. But now, with the weather intervening and weather coming in, the colder temperatures, there seems to be, temperatures flying. But India is not prepared to, let up. And I think PGurus also covered this particular topic over the weekend.
Yes, indeed. And we're going to have some more articles, some more video interviews with people who have traversed the line of actual control, along the line of actual control, looking at India's preparedness. That interview will be airing very shortly. Stay tuned. But let's move on to world. In fact, let's before that, let's take a look at some of the states in the United States are still grappling with the coronavirus. And as weathers turn cooler, there appears to be a lot of churn going on. Suddenly you have new states reporting record high corona numbers. And I think barring Pfizer, nobody else has even said that we have a schedule for vaccine. So where does this vaccine business stand, sir? And what is the way forward? Because Mark Meadows yesterday said that this virus cannot be contained. Maybe it was a moment of truth. Maybe it was something that he was acknowledging that that's what's going to happen, whether it is Biden or Trump in 2021. What are your thoughts about the whole corona management by some states that seems to have gone out of control?
Yeah. Great question. I think this now is a global phenomenon rather than just confined to United States, because there's all over the world, rising pandemic consequences. I think there are two parts to the question. One is the status of vaccine. AstraZeneca just announced that they have resumed the trials and things are looking positive. They expect to announce a vaccine by first week of December. All right. So this is the latest headline. Both J&J as well as no, Gilead. In the reason, Eli Lilly hasn't come back as yet. J&J and Eli Lilly were the first ones, right? They withdrew when they had some issues. But J&J and Gilead, Gilead's remdesivir is now being endorsed as a medication, as a immunity booster, right? As a deterrent. And it's been formally approved by FDA. Then the second is the J&J back with their trials to see that, whether they can be back, modulate their vaccine and back in the field. So there seems to be this continuous effort in terms of finding the recipe for vaccination, and the stimulus package as well as the future stimulus package to come factors in both testing as well as mass vaccination. You need funds for both, as well as the hospitalization cover that needs to happen. So that's that part. As far as the first part that you raised, which is why there is prolific continuous spread. Look, at the end of the day, nobody knows the cause and the cure, right? Nobody knows. Everybody is second guessing and trying to seize a political advantage. If I am in power, I will do a better job. How will you do a better job when you don't know the cost? Is a $1 billion question, right? Just by putting on masks, you mean to say the behavior. Today, people are behaving in a specific way. Tomorrow, Democrats come to power. Suddenly, people are going to say, oh, we're all blue, so let's put on the mask and contain it. Now, that's not, behavior change is not going to be induced by changes in the political kind of leadership in Washington, D.C. or in the world. So what we are seeing is the natural behavior, people saying, as long as I don't get it, I'll get away with it. But when I get it, I'll deal with it. And you're beginning to see the cost of that. Suddenly let loose. I mean, I can see in Manhattan, I can walk on the streets. People are not wearing masks, right? Notwithstanding all this preaching that Biden is doing, wear the mask, wear the mask, wear the mask. Or tomorrow, I will show the photographs we'll announce it in PGurus, on 3rd Avenue. People sitting, 8 people sitting in a table and having no masks and, having their life. And you ask them, they say, we have no problems. So I think this whole thing is a political kind of camouflage.
Now, the next couple of minutes we're going to spend looking at the markets, but I want to kind of touch upon Gilead Sciences. Can you share with us who owns Gilead Sciences, who stands to benefit? Because what I'm also hearing is remdesivir is nothing but hydrochloroquine tablets in a slightly treat its COVID patients.
Well, I think that this is a very interesting question, but there's a lot of, when you actually go and take a look at the ownership of Gilead Sciences, you find, all the institutional investors and so on. But behind, there is this rumor floating around, which says that, George Soros has a stake, Bill Gates has a stake, Hillary Clinton has a stake, including Dr. Fauci's wife is somehow connected some way in the establishment of Gilead Sciences, Gilead Sciences as a scientist. There's also some issue around the patent, which is to be connected with China. So there's a whole bit of hazy air that surrounds this Gilead and remdesivir, right? And people ask this question in March, April, and it just disappeared. Hey, we use this for rheumatic arthritis, and we also use it for treating malaria. So this is already an FDA-approved drug. Over the counter, it's available in pharmacies. Why people are making, everybody knows it's an immunobooster. So if one of the missing links in this whole discussion around coronavirus is around, does immunoboosters help the person to overcome this naturally? That discussion and awareness has not happened. All the time it is around vaccine. India will argue the highest kind of what you call recovery rate, which is around 78, maybe it's now crossed 80%. I haven't checked the latest data, is because of the immunoboosters and the treatment that came with it, not because they invented a medication or not because they have already come up with a vaccine, right? It's not the case. So, therefore, there is some truth to this statement, which is to say, why is the natural immunity boosting not advocated as one of the mechanisms by which you can deal with this issue?
Yes, indeed. And unless you have something to add, Sridharji, we can bring our program to a close today because we're close to our 15-minute mark.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
And
Nice
thank
to.
you once again for joining. And please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and also to donate to us. We will be back again tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. After next week, there'll be a slight shift in timings because United States is going to fall back. But we will keep you informed on all those things. Thank you very much for joining, and we'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same channels. Namaskar.
Namaskar and thank you. Have a wonderful day in United States and have a great afternoon in Europe and wonderful evening